All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:31. This is Thursday, May 9th. This is actually the Spencer Board of Aldermen, our regular meeting for the month of May, due to next week being the runoffs for the primary, and this will be a polling location. So we are called to order tonight. We are missing a few board members. I believe Mr. Miller is ill, but he'll be joining us via Zoom. And then Ms. Seacrest, obviously, those of you know, unfortunately, her daughter had passed away recently, and so she is out tonight. Definitely keeping both of them in our thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, it turned out he ended up in Raleigh, so everybody's here.
That's good.
Joe, we hear you.
And Joe Morris is joining us by Zoom too, apparently. All right, and then Mr. Howe, I believe, is walking in right now. So we do have a quorum tonight, and so we are called to order, and we'll begin with an invocation. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for nourishing rain, keeping us safe through storms here in town last night. We thank you for the leadership of those who serve our town and the tireless hours they put into making our town a better place. Tonight, we thank you, too, for our board members that sit beside me and their leadership and their wisdom and guidance. And we thank you for our manager and the time he has put in with our department leads to prepare the budget that they are presenting tonight. Please give us wisdom, discernment, and guidance as we hear that initial budget and make decisions on the future for our town to continue to make it a wonderful place for all to live, work, and play. Amen. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, board, you have before you your agenda for tonight. It is a pretty packed agenda. And keep in mind there is a large amount on the consent agenda tonight for several reasons. And again, we will be getting our budget presentation for the next fiscal year tonight as well. So with that, are there any additions or deletions requested of the agenda? And if not, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
All right, there is a motion.
Second.
Mayor by Ms. Seacrest, Ms. Sledge, and a second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All right, all opposed? That is approved. All right, next item, we have quite a few recognitions to make this evening, and these are a variety of proclamations. And so the first one we're going to start with is to recognize National Public Service Recognition Week for 2024. And so I will read the proclamations. We do have those framed, and we will present those to the respective groups this evening. So the first is, whereas Public Service Recognition Week was first celebrated during the first week of May in 1985 to honor the people who serve the United States of America as federal, state, county, local, and tribal government employees, and whereas citizens in the United States of America are served every single day by public servants at the federal, state, county, and municipal levels. These unsung heroes do the work that keeps our nation working. Their tireless efforts are especially critical today during the COVID-19 pandemic, and whereas many public employees take not only jobs but oaths, and whereas many public servants, including military personnel, police officers, firefighters, border patrol officers, embassy employees, healthcare professionals, and others risk their lives each day in service to the people of the United States of America and around the world. And whereas public servants include teachers, doctors, scientists, train conductors, astronauts, nurses, safety inspectors, laborers, computer technicians, social workers, and countless other occupations. Day in and day out, they provide the diverse services demanded by the American people of their government with efficiency and integrity. And whereas without these public servants at every level, continuity would be impossible in a democracy that regularly changes its leaders and elected officials. And whereas citizens interact with frontline civil servants when they seek government services and many other civil servants work outside of the public eye, receiving little recognition for the wide array of accomplishments they achieve every day. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire board of aldermen and our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 5th through 11th, 2024, as Public Service Recognition Week. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to all town of Spencer staff, and that we urge all citizens to recognize the accomplishments and contributions of government employees at all levels, federal, state, county, and city. And so, with that, I will present this to the manager. All right, and I will invite Sergeant Leonard to come up for this one as well. And make sure I get the right one here. All right, this one is in recognition of National Police Week 2024. Whereas in 1962, President John F. Kennedy proclaimed May 15th as National Peace Officers Memorial Day, and the calendar week in which May 15th falls is National Police Week. And whereas National Police Week was established by a joint resolution of Congress in 1962, and whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Spencer Police Department, and whereas since the first recorded death in 1986, there are currently 24,067 law enforcement officers in the United States who have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty. And whereas the names of these dedicated public servants are engraved on the walls of the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial in Washington, D.C., and whereas 282 new names of fallen heroes are being added to the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial this spring, including 118 officers killed in 2023 and 164 officers killed in previous years, and whereas the service and sacrifice of all officers killed in the line of duty will be honored during the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial Fund's 36th Candlelight Vigil on the evening of May 13th, 2024. And whereas the Candlelight Vigil is part of National Police Week, which will be observed this year, May 10th through 16th. And whereas May 15th is designated as Peace Officers Memorial Day, in honor of all fallen officers and their families, and U.S. flags should be flown at half-staff. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me, as a town of Spencer, mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire board of aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 10th through 16th, 2024, as National Police Week. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to the town of Spencer Police Department and to all law enforcement officers in communities across the nation for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. I think the events of the past week have really underscored that proclamation and the fact that our public servants, our first responders, police and fire, put their lives on the line every time they step out, not knowing what they're going to be walking into. So we appreciate all that you do and the risks that you take to serve our town. All right, the next is National Public Works Week. On this proclamation, we'll invite Mr. Taylor to come up and have a seat up front. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the town of Spencer. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector. And whereas these professionals are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Spencer to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities, And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th Annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association and Canadian Public Works Association. And whereas the Town of Spencer Public Works Department is comprised of 11 professionals who are responsible for solid waste, yard waste, bulky item and litter collection, routine maintenance of fire, police, and public works vehicles, maintaining the town's streets, sidewalks, facilities, parks, grounds, and stormwater infrastructure, including landscaping, general maintenance and repairs, as well as the endless list of other duties, special projects, and events. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by the virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 19th through 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to the Town of Spencer Public Works Department and urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. All right, Chief Lanning. Next is for International Firefighters Day 2024. Whereas Australian volunteer fire lieutenant J.J. Edmondson organized the first internationally recognized symbol and date to honor, support, and respect all firefighters in 1999. And whereas May 4th is St. Florian's Day, who is the patron saint of firefighters and the first known commander of one firefighting squad in the Roman Empire. And whereas the first International Firefighters Day sound-off, the sounding of sirens for 30 seconds at noon, was held on the first Sunday of May of 2002 to reflect on the firefighters who lost their lives in the last 12 months, particularly those on September 11th. And whereas International Firefighters Day is observed each year on May 4th to honor and remember past firefighters who have lost their lives while serving their communities, to express gratitude to those who have served in this line of work, and to show support and appreciation for those who presently serve. And whereas citizens are encouraged to wear red and blue ribbons on this day, representing fire and water, and to stop at noon to say a prayer for those who freely give their time and service to the community, and remember those who have given the ultimate sacrifice fighting fires. And whereas at a moment's notice, firefighters are quick to respond to uncertain situations to mitigate danger and combat the threat of destructive fire to protect individuals, families, and the economic well-being of our community. And whereas the demands of firefighting are accompanied by personal, mental, and physical tolls that all firefighters knowingly accept while risking their lives to protect the lives of others. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 4th, 2024 as International Firefighters Day. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to the town of Spencer Fire Department, and that we urge all citizens to show support and appreciation for firefighters who protect our lives and property so diligently throughout the year, and by remembering past firefighters who dedicated their lives to preserve our safety. All right, and last but certainly not least is to recognize International Professional Municipal Clerks Week 2024. Whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk is a time-honored and vital part of local government existing throughout the world, and whereas the municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants and the only statutorily required position for all units of local government in North Carolina, and whereas municipal clerks provide the professional link between citizens, local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels, and whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all, and whereas a professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community, and whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of their duties through participation in educational programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the Office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, and in particular, our town clerk, Anna Canode Ward, and whereas Professional Municipal Clerks Week was established in 1969 by the International Institute of Municipal Clerks and is endorsed by the North Carolina Association of Municipal Clerks and all other members throughout the United States, Canada, and 15 other countries. And whereas in 1984 and in 1994, Presidents Ronald Reagan and Bill Clinton, respectively, signed proclamations officially declaring Professional Municipal Clerks Week the first full week of May and recognizing the essential role municipal clerks play in local government. Now, therefore, I, Jonathan D. Williams, by virtue of the authority vested in me as the mayor of the town of Spencer, and on behalf of the entire Board of Aldermen and all our citizens, do hereby proclaim May 5th through 11th, 2024, as Professional Municipal Clerks Week. Be it further proclaimed that we extend our appreciation to our town clerk, Anna Canode Ward, and to all professional municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. I know that's a whole lot of words to have to read, and I think it's most easily said by saying we appreciate y'all and all that you do very, very much. And we recognize that sometimes your work maybe goes unappreciated in the community or unrecognized, but rest assured with this board that we see all that you do, and it doesn't go unrecognized by us, and we're so very, very grateful for all that you do and the fact that you've devoted your careers to Spencer, so thank you. We will move on to public comment, and I don't believe we have anybody signed up for public comment. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So then we will move forward to our consent agenda. You have quite a few things on the consent agenda, including departmental reports tonight. So take a moment to review that. If there's any need to pull an item from consent agenda for further discussion or questions, please let me know and we can do that at this time. Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I would note that there is one misspelling in the contract for audit services.
Oh, sorry, I had corrected that
Okay.
after I printed the original one. Got that.
Okay, so it has been corrected.
Yes, the one
Okay.
you have
Okay.
is correct.
All right. Perfect.
Thank you.
So with that, is there a motion to approve consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, there's a motion by Ms. Sledge,
Second?
second by Ms. Moody. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, all opposed? All right, consent agenda is approved. And so we will now move to item 7 on our agenda. We will receive a presentation from the town manager with the recommended fiscal year 2024-2025 budget. Mr. Granzese.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mayor and members of the board, and certainly that prelude in the form of all those proclamations, I think, was quite fitting to think about all the services that our team provides, and certainly join in the appreciation for what they do, and certainly that's what this budget is all about. It's about the services we provide and the resources that we need in order to do that. And so it's certainly a privilege to once again recommend a budget for the coming year to you. And what you're going to receive tonight is our recommendation, and it's a reflection of the effort of our entire team working together, and certainly our finance officer, Heather Can, has played a critical role in making sure that we're going about that in the right way. And so what you have before you, hopefully everybody's got a copy here, and we're gonna walk through it. We're gonna talk a little bit about revenues first, and kind of the environment that we're working in, and then we'll talk about some of the key priorities and expenditures that we're recommending for the next year, and then we'll go from there, if that sounds okay.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, certainly our budget is a reflection of the guidance that the board and the community has provided, and for many years we've gone through a process of a community involvement opportunity and an update to our strategic plan, and which is wonderful because that gives us very good direction and priorities about what is important from year to year, and again, this budget is an effort to be responsive to that. And the bottom line for the budget is that over the next year, we're recommending an overall budget of about $5.8 million, with about $5.389 million in the general fund, $154,971 in the Powellville fund, and $326,500 in the capital reserve and replacement fund. In order to do that, the recommended tax rate for the coming year is 62 cents per $100 of valuation. That represents an increase from our current rate, which is 55 cents. That, of course, is not going to be a surprise to our community. Hopefully, they've seen a lot of the information we've shared about why that's important, and we'll talk more about that later. We've for several months talked about specifically our key investment in our fire staff, and we've already started the process of bringing additional fire staff on board, and this budget reflects the full investment of that for the next year. And again, we'll talk about that. There are other revenue sources that we're recommending adjustments to in the coming year, and we'll talk about why and why that's important. And again, what you see before you is a reflection of our strategic plan and the goals that are designed to fulfill our mission and our vision. So, looking overall at our strategy and our kind of our revenues, we have typically been very conservative in our revenue estimations. Of course, that's a good practice. That's a way to maximize your chance of finishing the year in a positive way, right? You want to underestimate revenues and overestimate expenditures to the extent that's practical. That's how you can help to maximize your chance of success in that realm. We've had a challenge in the current year around sales tax, and that has implications going forward that we'll talk about. But if we go back a year ago at this time, we were getting projections from our partners at the North Carolina League of Municipalities of sales tax growth statewide over 6%. For the year we're in now, and we planned on 5% sales tax growth, thinking that would be a conservative approach, which is similar to how we had taken that information and adjusted it to our own recommendation here. Well, our trend for the current year has come in more at about 2%, which is really just a quicker flattening of the sales tax growth. So the sales tax is still growing, but it's the growth is slowing down at a quicker rate than we anticipated, and of course this is happening statewide. The league and their projection they've put out this year, looking ahead, and they always project for the current year you're in, and then for the year following, they are suggesting a 3% growth for the current year. Again, our trend is currently at about 2%, and we plan on 5%. And for the year following, they are suggesting a 2% growth for the following year. And so what this budget reflects in terms of sales tax is essentially a sales tax decrease from where we budgeted in the current year. We're planning on 2% more from what we're actually going to bring in this year, which again, at the end of the day, is kind of a negative force in our revenues, and one that we're needing to overcome in other ways. anything, Heather, you want to add in about the sales tax? Okay. From time to time, I might ask Heather to chime in on revenues.
So let me ask you this,
Sure.
as you're presenting that. So has the league provided any feedback or guidance on the reasoning for that declining sales tax? I mean, obviously inflation is up, so sales costs are higher. Tax should increase based on that alone. But is it just that consumers are buying less now because of inflation?
I think that's part of it. You think about what people are having to spend money on. It might be the grocery store, and it might be the fuel pump, and those types of things that they may not have the disposable income for the types of purchases that we would collect the full local sales tax. There's also, not a few years back, people were getting stimulus money and having extra money to spend on things. So I think it's a combination of those forces. There's also been some refunds, some sales refunds that maybe lagged behind statewide. That all trickles down. So it's just kind of a bad combination of forces that I think caused this change.
What's historically been our growth rate, like pre-COVID, before stimulus checks and things like that? Do you know what that's been?
I think this neighborhood of 2 to 3%.
That's a reasonable
Yes.
expectation.
And we knew we would get back to this. It just has happened quicker than what we thought a year ago.
One of the major things that they discussed in the projection is the whole harmless, with Medicaid whole harmless. And during COVID, they basically, with Medicaid, there was no stipulation put on people receiving Medicaid, and they're drawing that back out now. So that's roughly about $3 billion. How it affects the state across the board. So the Medicaid harmless is one of the big reasons and big factors that we're not growing, because they're changing that back to what it was pre-COVID. So.
And for the board's information, just to remind everybody how sales tax gets distributed, how we get our sales taxes based on a formula.
Sure, and it's a combination. The sales tax is collected and all comes in, to Raleigh, and part of it, a portion of that gets distributed back point of sale, and a portion of that gets distributed back by population around the state. But just a small, fraction of the 6 or 7 cents you're going to pay depending on the county you're making a purchase in. So of that amount, you might have 2 or 3 cents, I believe, that is getting distributed back according to one of those two methods. And then once that happens, it's up to the pleasure of each county commission and of how they share it. That could either be per capita, which is the case here in Rowan County. It could also be by according to the property tax levy and a different kind of formula. But here it's per capita. And so that's how our share, and it winds up being a small fraction of that when you pay a sales tax, the 7% that you would typically see on a receipt for a purchase. Okay, so I got the sales tax a little sooner than I was planning on, but it's kind of it's one of the driving forces that I wanted to certainly mention. But certainly another important topic when we're talking about our revenues is our property tax. And as I mentioned, we are recommending a rate increase from 55 cents to 62 cents per $100 of valuation. And the way that property tax is calculated, of course, is the county gives us a total of all the assessed values as of January 1 each year. So you'll recall a year ago we had a revaluation process where every property in the county had a reassessment done, a revaluation done, and that caused a big change in values that we were working with. This year we don't have a big change. What we see is a change from the values last year, but it's more of a natural change from growth, and that was about a 2% increase on our values overall from about a year ago. The rate of 62 cents is combined with a collection rate that we are seeing 98% collection rate, and you apply that to come at the ad valorem revenue amount of about 2.3 million. That's up from the year prior, which I need to flip to a different page in my book here. But the year prior's ad valorem revenue was in the magnitude of 1.8 million. And yeah, I think I'm looking at the right page here. So that tells you part of the changes, is in that in itself, and of course raising the tax rate, and we'll talk about some of the things we're wanting to fund with that. Another change that's being recommended is making use of the municipal vehicle tax. That is something that municipalities in the state have authority to levy up to $30 per vehicle. Any amount you do beyond $5 has to be restricted towards transportation purposes, street improvements, and those sorts of things. If you run a transit system, you could designate a portion of that for transit. But in our case, any amount above $5 would be designated similar to power bill funds. They would be a way to increase that revenue source in the power bill. But if you think about a $10 fee that would be paid per vehicle at the time of registering it with the new license plate or renewed license plate, you pay the property tax amount, that same 62 cents you would pay, and then this would be an additional flat $10, where for every $10 it's split $5 to the general fund, $5 to the power bill. We have about 2,600 vehicles in town, so that $10 fee generates $13,000 for the general fund and $13,000 for the power bill fund in this recommendation. And so if you think about the effect of that over time, and as things change with vehicles, the vehicles depreciate. As you know, over the course of your life, it's a way that a vehicle owner can contribute in a more stable way to the services that those are going to fund. The other factor in that is, and it's in combination with another adjustment I'm going to mention in a moment, is there are some taxpayers who may own a vehicle, but they may not own property, and there may be some property owners who do not own a vehicle, but they own property, and so it allows for a bit of a balance there. Where in some cases it may reduce a tax burden on a property owner that doesn't own a vehicle, and in other ways, for a vehicle owner that doesn't own property, it allows them a way to contribute to the services. Any questions about vehicle tax?
So I want you to provide just a little more context too for the board, because obviously this is something a few years ago the board considered. The timing wasn't right to do that, but given our need to raise additional revenue, one of the strategies here was this is a way to offset additional property tax increase that would otherwise be needed. But the other thing that I want, Peter, if you'll point out, is the number of other communities within North Carolina that are doing this, because we're one of the few that are not doing it. And frankly, I believe a lot of the communities are actually maxing out up to the $30 limit, whereas what's being proposed in this budget is $10.
That's correct, and I do not have the statewide data. That's something we could look at. We do have the data for Rowan County, and just for example, the city of Salisbury, the town of Landis, the town of Rockwell, and the city of Kannapolis, part of which is in Rowan County, do collect this additional vehicle tax. The other municipalities, which would be the ones that do not currently, in addition to us, would be East Spencer, Cleveland, China Grove, and Faith and Granite Quarry. So it's kind of a mixed bag. You notice some of the larger, the Salisbury and Kannapolis are larger, but also Rockwell, which is smaller than us, and China Grove, which is Landis and and Rockwell are collecting it, which are similar in size to us, or a little smaller.
The other thing that we are continually hearing are, from a code enforcement perspective, complaints about vehicles and junk vehicles and things like this. This maybe provides a little more incentive for folks not to hang on to those vehicles that are cluttering up the roadways and things like that. So,
How would, if you don't own a vehicle, or if you do own a vehicle but you don't have property tax, you would pay it when you get your license tag. But the people who have property but don't own a car would not be taxed?
Right. So
correct?
just like when you renew your license plate,
Right.
part of the money you pay to the DMV at that point is currently the property tax piece.
Right.
So this would be another $10 on that vehicle that's collected, and then that gets returned back to the counties, who then distribute it to the municipalities.
Okay. I've got to get my car inspected this month.
Okay, so another revenue area I wanted to mention is our monthly solid waste fee. That amount has not changed in memory. I don't know when the last time that adjustment has happened, but there was no memory here without digging through files of when it's changed from $15 a month.
I think it might have been when we made the transition to curbside garbage pickup. We went away from the picking it up
Back
behind
door.
people's houses. Yeah, I think that was when those fees were updated.
So currently we, again, residential customers pay $15 a month. That allows for collection of up to 2 carts. It covers our really high level of service we provide, actually, when you think about our weekly yard waste collection, our weekly bulk waste collection. We also do have a commercial rate for a more limited amount of commercial customers we serve. That's currently $25 a month. And that fee is actually helpful because it lessens the subsidization of those services by taxpayers that may not be making use of them. If you think of a large industrial taxpayer, they can't receive our solid waste services. They have to contract that on their own. And I'll talk a little bit more of the full calculations here, but just an example of for the industrial customer that might have a $60,000 tax bill. You think about what the difference in the tax rate might do when you're able to focus the cost of those services on the customers that are using them. We'll talk more about those numbers in a little bit. But somebody who might own maybe a multifamily development or industrial customer, they're not receiving these services. Their property taxes are orders of magnitude larger than many typical single-family homes, two times, 5 times, 10 times larger. And so again, we've had increasing costs in the cost of doing that business. When you think about the cost of fuel, there are increased fuel lines throughout our budget. You'll see, and that's just due to what it's costing to keep our fleet running. Our tipping fees at the landfill have gone up. Those are all increased costs that have happened, I'm sure, ever since this fee started, but we have not adjusted the fee. We've instead, adjusted tax rates, and trying to keep it manage some through this fee helps offset the amount that we're having to adjust on the tax rate. When you put those things together and you think about an increase of $3 a month that's being recommended, so I haven't said that yet. I guess it's the recommended change is to increase by $3 a month that fee. So the residential fee would go to $18. We're recommending a $5 a month change on the commercial fee, so go to $25 to $30. That's going to be a minimal impact just because there's there's just a handful of commercial customers. So the driving number there is the $3 change. When you combine that with the $10 vehicle tax, that is the equivalent of about 1.5 cents on our tax rate. That generates together about $55,000. Each penny on our tax rate is worth about $37,000. So that just, does that make sense? The offset that I'm talking about. we would have to recommend a tax rate 1.5 cents higher than what we're recommending to raise the same revenues as what we're recommending with the 62 cents plus these changes. And what that means for your, the typical property owner, of course, everybody's property is valued differently, so it means different things. But just as an example, if somebody owns property that's worth $275,000, and again, looking at $56 more per year, that's assuming they own 2 vehicles, so $20 for the vehicles, $36 for the solid waste fee changes. In that case, there's a $45 savings in the property tax that they would pay from the rate that would have to be without it. And that number fluctuates. It can be modeled out, depending on the property value. But what that means for that example taxpayer, it's about $5 more a week, 72 cents per day to make that investment that we're asking, combined between the tax rate increase, the solid waste fee change, the vehicle tax. If you look at our median home price, which is a little lower than the $275, I think our median home price is at about $163,000 or so, and our average home price, which is a different metric but a little bit of a higher number, about $183,000. When you look at the impact, the same impact for those property owners, it's about $185,000 for the median property owner and $202 for the average property owner. So that's, going with the 202, that's roughly $16 a month, less than $4 a week. That's kind of the real practical ask that all this means. So I hope that's made sense. Do you have any questions about that piece of it?
So again, I think based on that, if in communicating this message, if folks ask, the overall impact, what's the bottom line impact that's proposed, is $4 to $5 a week for most folks in town.
Yes.
All right, board, any questions at this point?
Okay. So for several years, ARPA has been a driving force in our revenues, and this next fiscal year is the third and last fiscal year that the ARPA funds are going to be flowing through our budget. And of course, the approach we've taken has been taking the federal dollars, applying them to salaries and benefits, because that's a lot simpler for a variety of reasons, and it just offers more flexibility to us as well. And then that frees up our local dollars to do other things. We call those ARPA supplanted or ARPA enabled funds, is a more recent term that I like saying better. ARPA enabled funds. I think it makes sense. And over the last 2 years, we've done a number of projects, and the document includes a listing of that, and we've tweaked that from year to year. And what I have before you is actually a couple of things. And one of which is about our current year funds. We had currently planned to use some of our ARPA-enabled funds for strategic property purchases. Well, the strategic properties have yet to avail themselves for these funds to be used for that purpose. We have another project that I'm recommending we do instead, which we're actually going to be talking about after we finish the budget presentation, but it has to do with our old building and in dealing with the asbestos that's present in that building. But that would be the recommendation for our current year plan, not for all the funds, for a piece of it to repurpose it for that, plus putting a slight bit more, another $3,000 towards our town park project. For the next year, which is the third year, the big project on the list is making a down payment on our fire truck that's on order. That is about an $891,000 fire truck. There's an additional $23,000, I believe, in closing costs and DMV fees. I think $18,000 in DMV fees is an additional cost of buying an $891,000 fire truck, believe it or not. And so, by making this down payment of $225,000, we reduced our financing to about $690,000 for that fire truck, and we think is a good combination of providing some funding to it now versus financing that over 20 years. And then kind of the final piece revenue wise is using cash. And over the last few years, we have put quite a bit of cash into one-time capital expenses, and we're recommending that to a little bit of a lesser extent this year because we want to make sure that we do keep our available fund balance at a healthy level. And so what we're recommending for this coming budget, and again, part of this is based on the issue with the sales tax. We're not expecting as much of a positive revenue for the year end as we have gotten the last few years. So we still think we're going to wind up positive with money that we would be contributing towards the fund balance that we typically have appropriated that right into the following year's budget. We think that's going to be to a lesser extent this year. And so we're recommending just $184,000 of fund balance appropriation into our budget. But also the other piece of that is for our capital reserve fund, designating some of our fund balance for capital reserve. We'll talk a little bit more about that fund in a bit, but those amounts are lower than what you've seen over the last few years in total. And what it does is, it's making our budget a little more sustainable, right? To the more we can fund on our ongoing year-to-year revenues, and the less we're relying on using our cash, that's better for the long run. And ultimately, we want to get to a point where we're able to really contribute more cash into those funds, so that 10 years from now, when we might need to invest in something, we've been saving up cash rather than kind of doing a year-to-year analysis. We have also, as part of our budget, the recommended budget includes some changes to the fee and charges schedule. The solid waste fee changes that have been described are certainly in there. I've made some notes about a few other changes, really nothing of high significance there revenue-wise, but there is a few notes there about some of the changes you will see in the recommended fee schedule. One of which is some adjustments to the planning and development fees. Again, we don't see a significant revenue impact per se that we calculated in, but there were a few fees that we think larger developments that were coming along maybe would, they probably shouldn't have paid the same $50 or even $500 fee for a multi-million-dollar development that a residential project would have. And there's been an addition of some ongoing plan review fees to help capture some of the effort of our planning staff that's required along the way. Okay, Heather, anything else about revenues that we need to cover? Okay. We're just getting started. All right. Well, we're going to move on to the other side of the ledger, the expenditures, and I'd like to start with highlighting the personnel highlights, and of course that means what our staff are going to be receiving in salary and benefits, which of course is a huge part of our budget. It's a really critical part of our budget because we can't do anything without having a talented staff and recruiting and retaining them. There's really nothing too surprising or inconsistent with prior years in the recommendation. We're recommending the standard developmental increase this year. In the current year, we did a double DI program to really try to help stay competitive and move folks to their target pay ranges faster than we would typically suggest, just given the situation this year. And I think even looking across at our peers, the percentages that folks are giving in their budget recommendations for next year, this going back to our typical standard DI program is recommended, and that's worth roughly about 3.5% on people's on the current year salaries. In other words, we're also suggesting a range for those that are already in their target pay rather than the DI program, which is based on a flat increase over 7 increments. Once you get to target pay, we have a merit increase program of 2.5% to 3.5% based on your evaluation. And in both cases, neither of these are a cost of living adjustment. These are performance-based adjustments that are awarded based on performance evaluation, if that makes sense. We're recommending continuing the same levels of our holiday bonus of $1,000 for full-time staff and $500 for part-time staff. And we're certainly recommending our benefits package continuing at a consistent level. We've budgeted for a 7% increase in benefits. We have been fortunate from year to year that we have budgeted very conservatively like that, and it's the renewal when it comes, which is heading towards December, has been more favorable than that. So that's always been a kind of a positive thing for us, but we want to be sure we're being careful with that. So the budget does reflect that 7% increase. We have a new benefit that's taken effect with our latest renewal, which is the Employee Assistance Program. We're really proud to have been able to offer that to our staff, and we want folks to know that they're supported and they have the resources they need with whatever situations might be happening at work or at home. I'm very thankful that we've been able to add that into our benefits program. But as a whole, our benefits are really some of our strongest recruiting tools. I think we've been able to attract folks from other organizations, and they're very pleased with the benefits we offer here in Spencer, and that's something the board should be proud of, continuing to provide that. And then other notes about staffing. This budget accommodates the 6 new full-time positions that we've been talking about for a few months, and of course they were being phased in between April and June of the current fiscal year. This budget takes on the full cost of that for the coming year. There has been a position requested and recommended from our police department to add additional evening supervision and a corresponding reclass for some current positions to go along with that. There is a recommended position that's been certainly a priority in what I'm calling an active living coordinator. We've talked about the need for recreation staff. I think our some of the conversations have been we need a recreation director. I think this is a great way to start. I think when we have a larger amount of staff, a recreation director would make sense. I think to get started with this position, which we would be calling active living coordinator, is going to, again, get us off the ground and be able to have somebody who's activating our recreation spaces with programming and events. I'm recommending that position actually report to our town clerk, because there's a possibility for coordination with our public library that also reports to the town clerk. I think there's a lot of overlap there. And our town clerk actually happens to have some really good experience in this area with working in public parks in New York City. So I think that combination of existing talent and new talent will help us do what we need to do to get started in that area. And again, that position would be working closely with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board that we want to create. We're continuing to have funding in the budget for a MPA intern in the coming year, and continue our work we've done with public art. And then the other item that's in there personnel wise is to have our current compensation and classification plan reviewed and updated to make sure we are staying competitive. I'll note that there are no implementation funds in the budget. It's just funds to have a consultant help us get our market analysis done, incorporate any changes we've had in our positions, and do that legwork so that then we'll be able to come up with a price tag for implementation. And depending on how things are going next fiscal year, we can see if we might be able to do a budget amendment or if it's something we'll have to plan for the following year. But I think it's an important step we need to take to make sure we're staying competitive. It's been now over 3 years since we adopted our current pay plan.
And of note, several of our neighboring municipalities are either going through that process or have just wrapped up that process. So it's timely that we do that as well.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions about that? And then the next piece we'll be talking a few more of the nuts and bolts of our recommendation. All right. Well, so just to highlight a few of of course, this doesn't capture every penny, but this is kind of a list of the highlights of some of the key things we're going to fund or continue to fund in the coming year. I'll note in governing body, and when you look at, by the way, the governing body amount, part of what you see as an expenditure within governing body is the amount that we are transferring to our capital reserve fund. So there's a few $100,000 in governing body that is actually the designation of some of our fund balance to capital reserve. So just keep that in mind. If you see a number that you wonder why it's so big, that's part of it. But we also have quite a bit of grant funding that we're flowing through governing body. One is the $75,000 commerce grant that we're receiving the revenue for $75,000. And then we're to distribute those funds to for the North Rowan clinic expansion project. So those funds are flowing through there. We're recommending continuing the grant we started this current year for our school safety grant, the $20,000. Continuing to fund our support of community events, and that's been very successful over the last few years. Consistent levels there, including sponsorship of events at the Transportation Museum and Winterfest. In our town hall, I've mentioned, of course, the implementation of our pay plan. The figure is there for our developmental increases for the coming year. It's about $75,000. In the current year, again, it was a double DI program. We were at about $134,000. So that just gives you a frame for reference of how that's changed by doing a typical DI program. We're planning on a zoning map update. We haven't updated our zoning map since it was adopted 3 years ago, and we've got an estimate you see there, $2,000. The debt service, of course, for our town hall project that was completed, town hall police department, that's going to be with us for 30 years. This is year 3, $128,000 a year. And of course, I was in a finance class yesterday, and one of the points they made is you should budget for debt service before anything else. I said, that's a good way of thinking about it. It's really not optional. So that gives you a figure for that. With police, the position highlights that I've described, that's worth about $41,000. That's salary and benefits for half a year. I don't know if I mentioned that before. The recommendation for the police position would be for half a year, as well as the promotions. Some technology upgrades. We have, you'll recall, the new in-car camera system that we discussed several months back, that has a kind of a 5-year lease type program. This first year's lease is $23,750. That gives our police staff the capabilities they need with the in-car camera system. That cost will be $25,000 for the remaining years following that, because we prepaid a small amount, $1,200 or so in the current year. And we're recommending the replacement of one patrol vehicle. That's something, I know you see a lot of new vehicles. We would need to continue to replace, a vehicle or two each year as we go, so that we don't get into the position of buying 4 and 6 vehicles at a time. And it also allows us to cycle those out for a higher value, rather than, some of the older vehicles we're right now getting maybe $2,000 to $3,000. If we can replace vehicles sooner in their life cycle, we might be getting more like $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for a vehicle, just depending. And then something you'll see in both police and fire is a North Carolina League recommended platform for risk reduction, and it's there's a vendor that they partner with called Lexipol. And I don't know if any of y'all have heard of them, but they will take a look at our policies and procedures for police and fire and make sure they're up to date, legally, case law, etc. And then it's a online platform that anytime there's a change that needs to be made to stay in compliance, it kind of pushes that out through the platform, and it also provides a training opportunity. So you'll see amounts in both police and fire tied to that program. We've actually gotten some indication that the league will have some grant funding available to help go towards the cost of that. And by doing both departments, we've gotten a commitment of a 10% discount on the price compared to if we just did one. So those are a few of the highlights there. Also, going down to the fire department, you'll see the value of our staffing enhancements that we're taking on as salaries and benefits for 6 positions, about $371,000. Now, if you look at the fire department budget, you'll actually note that the numbers from year to year are not that different. We've offset some of this cost by not having to have as much funding for part-timers. We have very minimal part-time funding now as a result of the full-time positions. And of course, I mentioned the down payment on the engine. In Public Works, there's a mower that we're recommending a replacement of that, something that happens once every 5 years ago. And again, it's where if you can life cycle a mower at this point versus maybe 5 years down the road, you're going to get a lot more out of the sale of it. And then moving on to the active living and public library, I mentioned again with the active living coordinator position that's again a half-year request. So both that would mean we would target it starting in January, about $32,000 in salary and benefits for half a year, based on our current projections. Matching funds for our Carter House design. We've been successful in receiving a Robertson Family Foundation grant in the amount of $20,000 to go towards that. So this would be matching funds to give us the total $35,000 we would need to do some design services, and that would help us get our Carter House transformed into a more publicly usable space. The key thoughts with that project are adding restrooms in the basement level so that folks at Standback Educational Force would be able to make use of that, but also office space, classroom space, etc. on the upper floor of the current home. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. That's the general fund, and see if there's any questions before I move on to Powell, which shouldn't take too long.
I have one question about the active living coordinator position. We talked about having somebody working with the new park that will be built out here. If they start in January, is that going to be soon enough? Or
So
Then-
the park is in the final stages of design. We're eagerly awaiting that project to go out to bid.
Right.
Sound like
It's-
a broken record.
I agree. We will be under construction, fingers crossed, in the coming months, and it'll be under construction until next spring, summer time frame. So we think the timing will work well with having somebody getting on board in time for the park to open. But if the thought is about factoring into the design, well, we've actually been working on the design, of course, for several years, right? So
Well, I think one of the things that was said was it'd be nice to have somebody who was familiar with from the project from the beginning to the end, so that they would be aware of everything that was there. And that
Certainly.
was my only question about having them begin in January.
Yep.
So I don't know.
and again, it will likely be in the midst of the construction when it gets started. But I feel confident that we will be able to get the person up to speed, and I don't anticipate any issues or gaps from the timing. And the main reason for this timing is, of course, just budgetarily. This is what we feel good about recommending, and not taking on a full year at this point.
Plus, it'll take several months to bring that person, to advertise and bring that person
Right.
on board. What, if this, we're looking to fund this starting January,
Mhm.
when would you post that position?
If the budget's adopted, we could begin recruitment. But we probably wouldn't want to start immediately. But I would say, if we could probably by August, September, start that process, so that, if we could line things up and have somebody hired late November, early December, and have them start in January, that would be ideal.
It'll be here before we know it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
The risk management thing, is that that's something that the fire department's been working on with Mr. DeLuca?
That's correct.
And so is this a replacement for what he's been doing?
No, he has been recommending this for some time. So by getting this program on board, both the police and the fire departments will be able to better go through this process with the league, and then wind up with some. I should have mentioned this. There's some potential for accreditation, but there's also a potential for insurance rate reductions with the league by going through all this. So there may be some positive benefits that way in the future.
Okay.
All right. So in regards to the Powell Bill Fund, the amount is fairly similar to what you see from year to year. There is in this recommended budget no dollars appropriated out of the Powell Bill Fund balance. What you're seeing is the revenues that we get from the state, but also that includes the 13,000 local revenues that we're suggesting, $10,000 in interest revenue from our savings in the fund. So that brings us to the total of about $155,000, and the lion's share of that is being recommended for the Second Street project that's needed. That we've got a major stormwater failure that happened on Second Street, and it's been closed while we are trying to figure out how to budget for it. So the recommendation for next year is to focus on that project, and of course we do not do a resurfacing every year because we just don't have the revenue flow to be able to get a sizable enough contract. So what we typically do is take 2, 3, or 4 years of funding and put it together, and then do a larger resurfacing like the one we did last year. Like the 2023 resurfacing was about $300,000, and that was using two years of funds roughly.
Is there any way that we can find additional funds somewhere to do some of that? I mean, one of the major complaints I hear is about our street conditions, and obviously some of it is state maintained streets, but there's a lot of our private roads that we own that need work done on them other than just a patch here and there for a pothole.
And what I would say is, the organization I used to work for that has at the time the tax rate, the penny there was worth, the penny on the tax rate was worth $1 million. I think their penny's now worth $2 million somehow. Our pennies again worth $36,000.
Yeah.
But what an organization of that or communities of that size will do is they'll say, well, we're going to dedicate a penny of our tax rate towards this, and we're going to put $1 million a year into resurfacing.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, we can't do much with $36,000.
It would represent, unfortunately, the cost of maintaining streets here is not that different, other than the scale of in larger places, right? But that is where that would be what we could do, is try to put more revenues towards it you could use general fund contributions into the Powell bill, but there's cost to it. And so, what we're recommending with the vehicle tax at this point is
15,000.
is the suggestion. And of course, if you felt like, well, we could do 20,000, and then that 13,000 would become 39,000. If you did a $20 fee, because then $15 instead of just $5 would go towards it. So those are the orders of magnitude that we have to work with on the revenues.
The other thing to keep in mind with Powell bill, it wasn't until just a couple years ago that we did the pavement rating survey and started that process. And so it's going to take us several years as we work through that to really see the full impact of that. Because we're working through the worst of the worst streets right now.
That's true.
And so as we start to improve those, things are going to start looking better. But you're probably 10 to 12 years away from really being able to notice and see the tangible results of that. So, but we've got a process in place, and that's the message to keep sharing with people. I think we've got a message or a process in place that we didn't have before, and that year over year, every time we do a paving project, slowly but surely, conditions throughout the town are going to look better. I have a question as far as the Second Street project. Is that something that we would potentially be able to secure grant funding for, just due to the size of it and the nature of it? I mean, that may be worth asking our consultants about, if that's something, because if that's the case, then that frees up, we may not pave this year, but it frees up quite a bit of money that we could then put forward to paving the following year.
Yep. That's a good question.
I just hate to have to spend almost the majority of our Powell bill funding to cover the Second Street, a pipe repair project, if there are other funding mechanisms out there.
Yep.
We know we can't get grants for repaving, but we possibly could get grants for, condition improvements.
We certainly could check. And of course, we're fortunate to have the almost $2 million of grant funding towards a major project on 17th Street. One thing I do want to mention about our pavement eval process is we're actually asking, we had that done about 3 years ago. And a lot of things happened 3 years ago, didn't they? We think it's actually time to update that and to make sure we're not going based on old information, because things could have changed, and the street that scored, one way 3 years ago might be at the top of the list now. And we're looking to see if we can accommodate that in our current year, is to go ahead and get that update done on the eval, just to make sure we have good information. That from time to time, it seems to make sense to not just hang on to the same list for 10 years.
No, absolutely. But I'm wondering if 3 years is ideally doing it every 5 years is a reasonable time frame, especially if we're not doing repaving projects every year. If we're doing those every 2 years, where we may only get 2, maybe 3 repaving cycles out of it to change the rating systems. Every dollar we save from evaluations and put towards paving.
Sure.
As more streets we repave, so we don't have to do it. We could stretch it to 5 years.
Yeah,
That's something I don't normally say, but
I think the driving force behind that was Fifth Street in particular. Fifth Street is a street we've heard about,
I
and
never want to be selfish, but as someone who lives on Fifth Street in a Jeep,
and I don't know that Fifth Street, for example, scores in a way that it might if we looked at it, and that's kind of the driving consideration of do we need to look at this, but maybe there's a different scope of work we could look at where we say, hey, can you evaluate Fifth Street? And maybe it's quite a minimal cost to just look at that one versus the entire town. But
No,
I will say-
Fourth Street's not good either.
yeah, the far end of it, right?
Well, I mean, even I sometimes go down Fourth Street over to Whitehead to go home, and that road is full of holes. I mean,
Yeah, and I mean, that's what folks have asked is where we did the stormwater and water line project a few years ago. And,
Mhm.
part of it's nice and repaved, but then
Right. Yeah. Well, we
The
did
rest
get
of it's not.
some of it.
hold my coffee cup out there. And then I pull it back in.
appreciate the feedback though. We'll check into that.
It is exciting though to have a plan, to know that we're moving towards something in a meaningful way.
Okay, so then our capital reserve and replacement fund, the amount recommended for that for the coming year is about $326,000. Most of the revenue there again is provided through the transfer I described. We do have $50,000 in that fund available that we're putting towards that, and a big piece of that cost is that $225,000 plus another $23,000 and change towards the fire truck. So what remains are some of the things that I already mentioned: the police vehicle replacement and upfit, a few computers, a radio, the mower I mentioned in public works. So somewhat minimal this year on some of the replacements compared to prior years when we've bought 4 and 6 vehicles at a time and that sort of thing. But again, that fire truck is a big bite. And the other thing that I haven't necessarily put into a budget recommendation before, but I did this time, is what's not in here. There are some projects that were in the hopper that unfortunately we just can't recommend at this time, just to try to be good stewards and sensible with our funds. And one of those is actually the project to demolish the old building. We're going to talk in a little bit about that. It was a 2-phase process that would be about $60,000 for part of it and another $60,000 for the second, and we think we need to hold off on the second phase for now. There's a second patrol vehicle that we're not planning to replace. Also a kind of a surveillance camera system. We're not recommending at this time. In the fire department, kind of a small reduction in their request for uniform supplies and that sort of thing. And then in public works, we're going to hold off on replacing a chipper. All of the items that we were not recommending, it adds up to about $239,000. You might think that sounds like a lot. You might think that sounds like a little, but yeah, that was more kind of a significant amount. Our departments do a good job, typically of not asking for stuff just because they can. So our budget processes are typically pretty tight anyhow. So it kind of hurt in a way to wind up with this, but this is the best recommendation I can offer. And I've talked with each of our departments about these, and everybody's comfortable with where we are. They're thankful for what's been included and think it will accomplish our goals. And if things turn in a positive way revenue wise, we can relook at these. Otherwise, we'll look at them in future years. But for now, this is where we stand with the recommendation. And, with that, there's a lot of reading you can do in this packet. I've got, 10 pages of philosophy here that late at night when you want to delve into it, you're welcome. I won't read it to you now, but, there's a lot of opportunity reflected here. There's a lot of excitement, but it's also been a challenging process. And but I really appreciate all the effort that our team has put into it. They've done a great job. Everybody with their own part, and I can't say thank you enough. And I think in the long run, we're prime. We've been saying this for a few years, but we're on the kind of the cusp of some exciting things. If we could get one or two of these large projects to get on the ground, preferably before January 1, that'll reflect our values at this time next year and really make a difference. There's a few projects that single-handedly could increase our tax base by, easily 10%, just by one of them. So those are the kinds of things that are really going to help us grow in a sustainable way in our operations and keep up with things.
The other thing is, I think, keep in mind, several of those single projects that you're talking about are in progress.
Yep.
There's clearing going on.
At the truck
New
stop.
townhomes. There's also clearing for the new truck stop going on. So once equipment's there, that means it's full steam ahead.
Yep. But we don't recognize the revenue right away.
That's right.
And it's based on the values are based on January 1, and then we look ahead. But all in all, very proud of what we're presenting to you, and I'm confident that it reflects the vision that's been established, and certainly appreciate again the guidance of the board and the community in this process. This is the recommendation. It's not decided. That's up to you. It's up for you to deliberate and determine what you feel is appropriate for our coming year. But certainly appreciate the opportunity to recommend this to you, and again to our staff, and certainly Heather, our finance officer, who's been in the weeds on this. And we tried to get Anna in the weeds, and she Anna actually jumped in to save the day a few times herself. So it's been a fun process, and I'm really glad to be here and share this with you. And going forward, I should say, the process as it always is. This is the recommendation. Before it can be adopted, there needs to be a public hearing. We'll plan on having that at the June pre-agenda. The budget can be adopted at any point after that, so we'll be prepared for adoption at the June regular meeting. But if there's additional discussions that need to happen, we can have some opportunities to do that either at the planned recess meeting in a few weeks later in May, or use one of those June meetings to workshop as well. But with that, I'll be quiet, and again, thank you all for your consideration.
Great, thank you. And thanks for your time, and Heather, your time, and the entire staff. It's been a labor of love, I know, over the past few months. So obviously well thought out, well presented. It's given us lots to think about, and we're really appreciative for all that y'all have invested in putting this together. And presentation makes it easy for us to be able to review, but also easy for us to be able to answer the public when they have questions. Thank you. Board, any questions at this point?
A copy for the public is going to be available here. Is that right?
Tomorrow,
Yes.
I believe.
Well, we do have a public copy already here.
Okay.
Tomorrow we will get some things published on the website and send out a news release and get it on social media and all those sorts of things to kind of really blast it out there. But we do have a public copy already available here.
If I may just briefly, I don't hold anybody up. I know we got another thing to talk about. I don't know I'm going to be here on the 21st because we have a meeting with work, and I think it's going to be a bit of a barn burner. So I just want to, first off, you guys are just amazing. Just want to point out a couple of things that I think it's just food for thought, especially since we're asking our citizens, us included, a 7% raise on taxes. yeah, I've made a couple of stars on things that all those things I like, all these things I think ultimately we need. But if we're asking for a 7% raise, not 7%, but a 7-cent raise, do we need all of them at this point this year, and this year being next year? And I also, because basically each project is about 1 cent, and not that we necessarily need to axe all of them, but maybe we can not do 1 or 2 of them and save a cent or 2 or 3 on this raise. And I'm just spitballing. So nobody throw anything at me. It's nothing other than I'm just looking at things going, if I'm at home following along and my bills are going to go up, I might ask you, is this something we really, really need if we're asking for a raise? I'm looking at the 10,000, the 29,000 for the commercial and historic grant programs. I know those are important. I know people like them. I know we use them. I'm not saying we can never have them ever again. It's just, is that something that's 39,000 together if it's all used. Likewise, my own suggestion last year, the $20,000 school grant, is that something for 1 year? Is that something we can do without? And then also the risk thing we mentioned, and the coordinator position, if it's a half-year position. And again, all those things are great. I think we need all of them. But is it, we put all of those together, do we need all of them for next year? Can we do without 1 or 2 of them one time? And I say that because, for example, talking about the townhomes, I did some quick math. If you get the townhomes up, the conservative basis, they're mostly in January 1. That's a couple $100,000 benefit to our tax base right there. So, they easily come back in, and then some. I'm just not saying I support even what I'm saying. I'm spitballing, workshopping this. Are these things? Can we look at 1 or 2 of these ago? And are these things we really need if we're asking our citizens to raise, the 7-cent raise?
So I think those are great points, and obviously things we need to consider. What I will also point out is our tax rate can change from 1 year to the next. Mm-hmm. And so we can't set a tax rate now thinking that long term that's what that might be. It may be 62 cents this year. It may go down next year based on assessed value. And I think that's the mentality we've got to have, is we've got to look at tax rate is a year-to-year thing based on what expected revenues are. Because year over year, the plan is long term, we're going to be adding additional growth and additional tax base, so that rate will come down. But the problem I think is that we look at is we've got so much momentum right now with the programs and the things that we've established that to start to take away from that at this point in time, the community appearance and historic preservation commission and those grants and those programs, yeah, is it something that we could stop for a year? It is, but how much sacrifice are we going to make in losing momentum for those programs, losing the work that's been done by staff to develop the recommendations and the protocols for them? So, I get that, and I think we need to consider that. But what I also want to make sure is that we are not losing momentum that's propelling our town forward and developing that growth, right? Because as we're investing and our citizens are investing in that, the long-term goal is that additional growth drives the tax rate down, and then it allows us to do even more than we're doing now at a reduced rate. And so what I don't want to do is us to say, be short-sighted and think, well, just for this next year, we're going to cut all this stuff and lose the momentum that we've invested so far. So that's all I would say to it, but I do think you're right. We need to look hard at, are there things that can be, because, 1 cent on the tax rate is an impact in people's pocket. Yeah. And it's $37,000 in revenue for the town. So, all good thoughts. Other input? Okay. We will have an opportunity. We'll at the end of this meeting, we'll recess to the 21st and have an opportunity to workshop this a little bit. So what I would encourage is folks to spend some time reviewing this, digesting it, come up with questions. If you have questions, I'd ask that you get those to staff ahead of time so that they can look into it and have responses and be well prepared to address that. And then we can kind of work through those and collectively come to an agreement of what we're going to put forward at our June meeting. All right. So next we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is to consider authorizing the town manager to negotiate an agreement with Double D Construction Services, and then also consider adopting a resolution for approving the conveyance of personal property to certified nonprofit organizations. This all centers around our old town hall building. And so, Peter, I'll turn it over to you. I think the thing that we're talking about tonight is an agreement related to asbestos and lead paint abatement, things that need to be done prior to demolishing that building. And really, things that need to be done prior to anything happening to that building. Those hazardous substances need to be abated.
Yes. So thank you, Mayor, members of the board. So yes, the asbestos present in that building, we've had it tested and sampled, and it's largely around the caulk, the window caulk, the flooring, the hard tiles, the adhesives under the carpet. So that when we talk about abatement, it's basically removing every bit of flooring out of that building and removing the window caulk and a few other areas. And we have been soliciting quotes for demolition of that building over many months, and the quotes we were receiving were not considering hazardous materials at all, and they were exceeding $100,000. This quote we received from this vendor that was recommended by the asbestos testing group that we used, and we've checked references and has come highly recommended with other local governments in the area. Again, can do both phases for about $115,000 or so, with the first phase of the asbestos abatement being about $56,000, and then the demolition scope would involve removing the building and grading the property to more of a flat site that would be able to be just kind of a flat lot, leaving the parking in place, because there are 26 available parking spots there until we're able to do something else with the property. But that would be kind of the scope of the demolition. So what we're requesting is authorization to proceed with this first phase of the asbestos abatement. In order to do that, we have to finalize getting all the old stuff out of the building. We had a local auction broker come and take a look to see if it would make sense to go with that approach of surplusing and auctioning off the property. They determined there wasn't enough value there in all the furniture that we have remaining, basically, to make it worth their effort in that process. And so what we're recommending is using this approach of which is, according to state statutes, you can adopt the resolution that's been recommended, and we declare the remaining items surplus, and we can invite nonprofits to come to a certain day, and if they have a need for a desk or a chair or whatever they like, they'd be able to do that. And then whatever else remains, we could work to make those another way to dispose of property is by negotiated private sale. So we could open that up to the public and invite folks to kind of like more of a yard sale feel, make an offer. And then, unfortunately, whatever would remain, we would basically leave in place for the demolition to handle. And in the meantime, again, you heard me say we're not recommending this demolition phase right now. I think the building could be usable for training for fire and police in that interim period, which would be good because we'll have all the hazardous materials out of it. So that's a bit of a benefit on waiting. There's no cost difference from the vendor between if we do it all at once or if we space out the phases. So there's really no downside other than, the weight of still having that building sitting there when we're hoping to have it used for other purposes. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Board, questions?
I was asked last night at the Central Iowa Council meeting if there was any vacant buildings in Spencer that weren't being used that could be upfitted or something. And I told her the only thing that really came to mind was our old police building, the fire department, town hall and police. I don't know if there's we don't own anything else that's vacant.
Not at this time, other than, of course, we have our vacant lease space.
Well,
here.
yeah, obviously that's not what they're talking about. They were
Yeah.
talking about, dilapidated buildings or something that can be reused.
We have a lot of that in town. We just don't necessarily are the ones that own it. But
Yeah.
if they're looking for, it depends if they are only looking for government-owned buildings, then yes, that would be our offering.
Yeah. Well, I told them we had some storefronts that were vacant, that sort of thing. So I'll follow up and see if there's.
So they want to fix a sinkhole?
I don't know. I'll ask them. We have two of those, don't we? We have one on 2nd Street and we have one on North Berlin, or North Salisbury.
South Salisbury.
Yeah, Salisbury Avenue. Yeah.
All right, board, any other questions?
I think this makes sense. It's the best outcome for now. It can't be used by anyone until it's taken care of.
Okay. So, board, with that, then we'll take this in two motions. Is there a motion to authorize the manager to negotiate and execute a contract or agreement with Double D Construction Services?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Moody. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Muhammad. All in favor? All right. All opposed? All right. That is approved. Next item is to consider adopting Resolution 24-10, which would approve conveyance of personal property to certified nonprofit organizations to dispose of the remaining items within that building. So a motion to adopt Resolution 24-10.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Muhammad. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Howe. All in favor? All right, all opposed? And that is approved. Okay. We have reached the end of our agenda for this evening, so we will open it up for requests and comments by mayor and board. Ms. Sledge.
Well, I want to say congratulations to all these organizations in recognition of their recognition weeks. We do appreciate every one of you and all that you do for this town. So thank you. You've been recognized. I would remind seniors too that our senior luncheon is coming up very soon, and I don't have that.
I believe it's May 21st.
May 21st. The deadline to register is sometime soon. So you need to contact Rufty Homes in order to register for that luncheon. And I just picked up a copy of this out front because I never did get one in the mail. So I don't know whether any other.
I got mine.
Well, it should have been here long ago because it's talked about things that were going on April 20th and maybe even earlier than that. So we need to find out what's going on with that. Just as a personal point of privilege, I would like to say that my heart is with the family of Molly Seacrest Eisenhower, and the public is invited to a memorial service for her on Saturday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the North Orion High School auditorium. And our thoughts are with the entire family in that sad event.
Mr. Muhammad.
Okay. I want to first say Peter, great work, and staff putting that packet together in reference to the direction that we're planning forth to go in. Pretty transparent for the most part. Also, Alderman Miller, hope that you feel better. Good to see you via Zoom. And
a dog, so that should make him feel good.
very heartfelt. Want to also say to Mayor Pro Tem Chris and her family, may the Most High provide them with strength, guidance, and comfort during this time. I had the opportunity last week on Thursday to represent our town and our board at North Rowan High School. I was able to award the student of the quarter for the third quarter and fourth quarter. It was very exciting to be in there with our young scholars singing the awards that they were receiving, some going to the armed forces, some going to the workforce, some attending college, various avenues, and just knowing that our young people here in this town are doing great things and it's not going unnoticed. And also too, want to thank the staff, department heads too, because the recognitions that we're giving for the weeks, it's not just those weeks throughout the whole entire year. We would not be able to make it without you all. And there's never a time that I can say, and I'm sure everyone would agree, that you all are not recognized. And we thank you. We thank you.
All right. To second previous comments, I thought was appropriate. Today we honored our staff, public servants. You guys are just phenomenal. You're amazing. I'm glad that what we're doing in the budget to get some full-time firefighters for some relief for you guys. Police, fire, public works, you guys work your tails off, and we appreciate what you do. We see it. And so I don't think we can say it enough, loud enough, bold enough, big enough letters, that we appreciate what you do. Same as my colleagues mentioned earlier, to Miss Sechrist and Wesley and your family. So sorry to hear about your loss. Hopefully I can join you guys on Saturday at 3 p.m. Pat, thank you for telling me about that. I think lastly, regardless of how the budget thing turns out, I know it's, I think we'd all like to think we wouldn't have to do the raise we're doing, but it's going to a good thing. We're going to have this fire service that we desperately needed, and this is just really the only way to do it. But to that, what are you getting in return? And I don't even know the number. I'm sure if I tried to add it up, I would grossly shortchange it. But the number of grants and extra external money that's come in to the many things that our staff have gone out and procured, you're getting serious bang for your buck. And some, I know some of that it's not even seen yet. The murals aren't up yet. The park's not here yet. But I think in 12 to 18 months, maybe hopefully a lot less, we're all going to have shiny new toys to point to. And almost all that came from folks and entities and organizations outside of our town, and our staff and our manager, and they went and got that. So I know it's tough. It's going to hurt the wallet. It's going to hurt our wallets, but it's going to a good thing. And I'll yield my time.
Thank you. Ms. Mooney.
I really enjoy getting to recognize everyone from the town of Spencer and our first responders. We don't get to do it often enough, but I will be brief on that because my friends before me have done such a nice job. Thank you guys so much for putting together such a wonderful budget proposal for us. I look forward to being able to go through it with more time and intention, and just knowing that not only is it for the benefit of us as residents of the town of Spencer, for our safety, well-being, for the betterment of the town, but also that we care for the safety of our first responders, of our employees for the town of Spencer, of their families, And I think it's important that we recognize that as well, that not only is it for us as the town residents, but we want our amazing staff and first responders to be able to go home safe at the end of the day to their families. And I really appreciate the time and attention and care that we've put into that, to be making sure that they have everything that they need to do their job to the best of their ability and go home safe at the end of the day, which is really important. Especially we recognize that it's, Mental Health Awareness Month, so that's important as well. And then lastly, I just wanted to thank everybody for the town of Spencer who volunteered for United Way. That was a really cute picture, you guys, with your mud boots on, clearing out some paths around the school. So thank you guys so much for volunteering your time. I was sad I couldn't be there that day. It got rained out and I had to work, but thank you guys very much. That was great, and I know the kids will love it, so appreciate that. And thank you guys for joining us. Steve, I hope you feel better.
Serves you right for going on vacation.
Yeah, that's what you get. We hope we got souvenirs.
All right. Well, thank y'all very much. I'll keep it brief. The only thing I want to mention is we will be recessing until May the 21st at 5:30 p.m. And on that agenda specifically, we will have an opportunity to do a little workshopping on the budget if needed. And so again, if you have questions on the budget or anything like that, go ahead and prepare those, get those over to the manager in advance of that, so that staff can be prepared to answer those questions, and then we can work through those at that session. And then the other purpose of that meeting is to go into executive session to hold the manager's annual review. And if I'll remind you all, I think almost everybody's completed the online review, so thank you very much for doing that. Hopefully it worked a little better, the process this year, doing it with the online forum and the ranking system. If it didn't, we'll accept feedback on how to improve that even for the next year. But for being able to compile those results, what I will say is the way we've done it this year is very, very easy to compile those results the way that we're bringing them. So just anyway, be prepared. The 21st, we'll be doing that. That'll be the purpose of that meeting. And so tonight we won't adjourn, but we will actually recess that meeting. And we do not need a motion to recess that meeting. We will just stand in recess until the 21st. So, all right.
Mr. Mayor, can we get a copy of our evaluation? Is there a way for the individual to have?
Yes, probably.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
I like that.
Yeah, I would, because
I'll check and be sure. I think there is. I see everything all together, and so it's anonymous.
Okay.
But I'll confirm. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I guess we stand recessed.
We are recessed.
Okay.